Hi guys, welcome to Miley Media. Today we're going to be doing some Skinwalker stories. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, and comment. My father owns a small delivery service that operates out of Farmington, New Mexico. We mostly deliver small packages out to the middle of nowhere that are too much of a hassle for the large delivery companies to bother with. My dad is the only employee, and we have a few pickup trucks and a trailer. One day we get a delivery out to Window Rock, Arizona, on the Navajo reservation, about 2 hours from Farmington. My dad gets the call for the job while he is chilling with his Navajo friend Travis and his girlfriend. Travis mentions how he's got family in Window Rock that he hasn't seen in ages and suggests that they go with him. I was about 6 or 7 at the time, and it was summertime, so Dad decides we'll go down together. He can do his delivery really quick, then while Travis sees his family, we can go check out the Window Rock, a big rock face with a large hole in it that goes to the other side. We had a convoy in separate trucks. My dad's was loaded down with freight. We decided to bring along some walkie-talkies so that we could communicate with one another. We spend our time in Window Rock. Everything is generally uneventful, and we start heading home along the old highway with my dad and I in front, and Travis and his girlfriend in the truck behind us. I honestly don't remember most of the Window Rock trip, but this next part I'll never forget. We're somewhere on the road between Window Rock and Gallup, New Mexico. It had just rained earlier in the day and the road was kind of slick, so we were taking it pretty slow. On the left of the highway there is nothing but sandstone cliffs. On the right there is a huge field separated by the road from a small barbed wire fence. We crest the top of the hills, and down the bottom of the hill we see what appears to be a very large dog sitting on its haunches, in the middle of the road facing the cliffs. My dad calls over the radio. "Hey Trav, do you see that big-ass dog?" Travis starts yelling back over the radio. "That is not a dog. Speed up right now and hit it." He sounds almost hysterical. He just keeps screaming, "Hit it! JJ, you have to hit it! Please, please, hit that fucking thing right now!" So my dad starts to speed up, and as we get a bit closer I can begin to see a little more clearly. It's covered in a brown, wiry, matted hair that appears to have dried blood all over it. It's still facing the cliffs, but the moment our headlights hit it, it turns and looks at us, and it has a face. I don't know how else to describe it other than a mix between a bear and a human face. It looks twisted and distorted, almost in pain. As we get closer to this thing, we start to realize it's actually fucking huge. Though it was still sitting on its haunches, it's about shoulder height to the hood of the truck. We literally get inches from hitting it when it lets out this scream that sounds like someone screaming as their lungs were filling with water, and it leaps backwards toward the field, landing just on the other side of the barbed wire fence. Then, with another leap, it was gone from sight. Travis comes over the radio again. "Holy shit! Keep driving! We have to get out of here! We have to go faster!" He kept repeating that last part. We have to get out of here and we have to go faster. Pretty soon, we are speeding like crazy, and just as we start near the outskirts of Gallup, we get pulled over. Travis pulls his truck over with us. Naturally, this makes the cop, a Navajo man himself, very on edge, and immediately asks why Travis felt the need to pull over as well. Travis says, "We just saw a skinwalker a few miles back, and it's been following us." The officer immediately turns white, stammers something about a verbal warning, gets in his car, and takes off. We do the same. We didn't see anything else that night, but when we got home, Travis refused to let us leave without taking some sort of Navajo totem thing that's supposed to keep them away. Number 2. This all happened about 5 years ago. One night, a few of my friends decided, after a night of hanging out, that we'd go on an adventure at about 3 a.m. We took a ride about 50 miles to the old Spanish ruin in New Mexico. That was once seat of the Inquisition. I can't for the life of me remember what the place was called. So we jumped the front gate, and the place would start exploring. One of my friends brought a flute with him, and started playing it, and about 30 seconds into his mediocre playing, something started screaming, really, really loud, on the tops of the long destroyed walls of the place. It was going from wall to wall, really quick, screaming the most blood-curdling scream you've ever imagined. We noped the fuck out of there, and one of my friends even pissed his pants, and drove for a few hours to Bandelier National Monument, where we planned to camp out for the rest of the weekend. We got to Bandelier probably about 6 or 7 a.m. and set up our camp. After a few hours, just talking about what the hell happened at the ruins, I went to take a piss, and probably only like 300 feet from our camp. This is where everything gets a little fuzzy. I remember seeing two dust devils coming my way, and when I turned around again, two of my friends were there, and they were motioning me to follow them. I couldn't help but to follow them, like I was being pulled behind them in shackles. I followed them for what seemed to be 10 or 15 minutes, and then I snapped out of it. These weren't my friends. They had bright red hair, with both of my friends' faces and cat eyes. Both of these friends were brunette. I stopped walking, and they looked at me with probably the most terrifying gaze I've ever seen. Monsters in movies are nothing compared to this. I turned around and ran as fast as I could back the way I came from. After like 5 minutes of a full sprint, I got back to the rock that I pissed at and found our camp. Everyone was there, still sitting around and talking. They didn't even notice that I was gone. I told them what happened, with the look-alike skinwalkers. We packed everything up and left probably within like 10 minutes and got the hell back to Albuquerque. Number 3. I was a kid when this happened. My uncle and I were finishing up chopping and gathering firewood for my grandmother because it was getting dark. Driving back on a dirt road about 30 miles per hour, I had this awful sense of being watched. Before I could turn to look out my window, my uncle quickly shouted, "Don't!" I completely froze. My heart felt like it was beating out of my chest, and then completely stopped when I heard a tap-tap on my window. My uncle sped up and was loudly praying, in my native language. I didn't know what was going on, and thought it was over till our truck suddenly dipped from the bed. My uncle then started saying, "Look at me, and don't turn away," over and over. Then I heard it again, tap tap, but from the window behind me. It was getting harder to breathe, and I wanted to cry. A minute or two passed, and the truck dipped again. My uncle looked around and sighed. It was quiet, beside the truck on the road. He looked over at me and said, "We will ask your father to do a prayer in the morning, so the evil will forget our faces." I remember curling up on the seat and just staring at the radio, watching the time, listening to my uncle sing an old prayer until we got to my grandmother's house. Years later, I called my uncle because I had a nightmare about that night. We talked about it for a bit. He said, "I didn't see faces, just eyes, like brake lights you see on the road. It watched you." Before hanging up, I tried joking with him about it. "Why didn't you just step on the brake when it was in the back?" No laughter, just a pause. "Because it wasn't alone," he said. And yes, any kind of window tapping still scares the shit out of me. Tap tap. Number 4. Grandpa owned a large herd of sheep, which during the summer grazed in the mountains in central Utah. In the 1960s, his sheep herder was a small Mexican man. We'll call him Juan. Juan stayed in a very small trailer in the meadow while tending to the sheep. One evening, Grandpa drives his truck up the mountain to deliver some foods and supplies to Juan. As he nears Juan's camp, he starts seeing dead sheep all over the ground. Many of the sheep were thrashed into pieces. As he arrives at Juan's trailer, he finds the door shut. He has to kick it open to get inside, as Juan had locked it. Inside, Juan was curled up into a ball, mumbling incoherently and likely in shock. Grandpa picks up Juan, throws him into the truck, and takes off down the mountain to get Juan to a doctor. As he's flying down the twisty dirt road, Grandpa gets this terrible feeling like he's being watched and sees something out of the corner of his eye. By this time, the sun is setting and the light isn't very good. He turns to look out the passenger side window and he sees a creature he describes as looking like an inside-out deer running along the side of the truck. The creature dropped back out of sight, only to come bounding back even faster, running on his hind legs only. The creature then ran across the road right in front of the truck. Grandpa swerves to miss it and ends up rolling the truck down the mountainside. Juan is killed in the accident, and Grandpa spends more than a month in a hospital. It's possible that Grandpa was just playing with us, but that really wasn't his style. He was an old cowboy and swear that it was the truth. He brought it up when we were making fun of chupacabras. He believed that it was some sort of chupacabra-like animal that he saw. Number 5. As many of you might already know, many Navajo people are very reluctant to speak about skinwalkers because it is believed that it attracts their attention. Well, I, however, grew up away from the Navajo Nation and was very naive about the subject. When it came to skinwalkers, I was an absolute skeptic. My mom used to tell a story about how back in the 80s when she lived with her siblings and my grandparents, about how she and my aunt saw a skinwalker just outside the driveway under a streetlight. She described it as a black dog with dirty fur, a twisted noodle-like front leg, and these unnatural eyes with a soft burnt orange-yellow glow. Me, being my own close-minded self, doubted every word, but I never said my doubts aloud. But these doubts totally changed last year when I went to my grandparents' house in October. Me and my family had just finished up at the carnival on the Navajo Nation Fair, and we called it a night. The house was close enough where we could walk home in just 10 minutes, so we did. When we got there, it was about 9 at night. We stayed up till about 2, catching up on family affairs and the local news. It was during that time that I just decidedly opened my mouth to blurt out the question, "Hey, are skinwalkers real, guys?" I asked. "You shouldn't be speaking about that," my grandmother said with almost disturbed yell in her voice. So she and my grandfather both decided to go to bed. After being scolded by my mom, one of my aunts chimes in with very cautious tone and says, "They're real, all right. Had a few start screaming outside my trailer in Farmington just a night ago. Your cousin had nightmares the whole night and woke up crying that morning." Not wanting to push the discomfort any further, we all decided to go to bed. Now the trailer home is pretty old, and it was really a nice night, so we slept with the windows open, with screens to prevent bugs coming in. Everyone had drifted off to sleep, except for me, because my mind was still going a million miles a minute about skinwalkers, and wondered if I ever encountered one here on the reservation. As a kid, I was told it was taboo to think about skinwalkers because it can still call their attention. That's when the shit totally hit the fan. Just as I was settling and finally getting relaxed for sleep, I started to hear something moving outside. I got up from the couch and started wandering over to the kitchen window. In the trailer, all of the rooms have lights out, so only visible light can be seen is from the porch out front. I was thankful for this because I told myself if it really was a skinwalker outside, then hopefully it wouldn't notice me seeing it. So I muster up the courage and take a quick scan of outside. From the porch light, all I can see is the dusty ground and the vehicles that the family drove, along with some old metal trash cans that stood beside the road. Looking for about a good 5 seconds, I wasn't able to see anything, so I was getting ready to turn around and walk back to bed thinking it was just a stray cat or something. Only have taken 2 steps, I hear what sounds like a distorted scream coming from the outside, definitely close by. Fear rising, I look outside again, and there I see it. A coyote-like figure staring in my direction from behind the cars, just outside of the reach of the port light. It only looked awfully wrong, and gave off an evil vibe just from seeing it. It was gray with very disheveled hair, and a horrific orange-red soft glow came from its eyes. I noped the hell out of there and ran back to the bedroom. It was at this moment I had begun to notice an awful stench in the air that smelled like rotting meat. I started trying to wake my mom up, who was like, "Oh my god, it's almost 3 a.m. What do you want?" I immediately began in a shaken voice, "There's something scary outside." Then she, now annoyed, woke up and said, "It's probably just a stray animal or something. It's the res. Animals wander all the time at night." She obviously wasn't getting the drift of what I was saying, so I screamed, "There's some Blair Witch project going on outside, Mom." That got her attention. "What? What the hell are you talking about?" Then we heard it. The thing outside started making more of its dreadful-like screams and started what sounded like thrashing outside on the ground. "You hear that? That's what I'm talking about." So both her and I got up and looked outside the window, and the coyote thing was making its way to the door. It walked with an odd limp and dragged its back right leg as if it was handicapped. We could hear it start to scratch against the door and make this odd, muffled moaning sound. My mom went and got my dad, and they both started shouting in Navajo all sorts of words, telling the thing to go away and saying it's not welcome here. With all this commotion was enough to get the rest of the trailer up. As they came out into the hallway, the only thing my mom did was turn to them and say, "Skinwalker," while proceeding to point to the door. Apparently, they already knew exactly what to do, as my grandfather got out a handgun from a drawer and a bag of ashes. He coated a few bullets and loaded them into the gun and went straight to the door, yelling out more Navajo that was too fast for me to comprehend. He swung open the door and fired twice. Nothing. The thing managed to escape before my grandpa could put a bullet in it. "That's the fastest one I've ever seen," said my grandpa. "Next thing you know, my aunt and parents are freaking out about what just happened, saying stuff like, 'What if it comes back tomorrow? It saw us. Does that mean we're targets now?' After my grandparents calmed everyone down, saying, 'We'll be fine,' and we all went back to bed. Morning comes, and my grandparents call one of their neighbors to explain what happened. Apparently one of them was a medicine man who used to partake in a Yi Bi Chi, a ceremony for healing and curing sickness. and came over to bless each family member and the grounds outside. These are a little bit shorter stories today because I'm trying to cram a lot of information into it. We're going to do a few parts of the Skinwalker stories. I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you next time.